Okay, so here's factoring trinomials 2, and this is where a is not equal to 1. We're on page 24 of your notes package. So when a is not equal to 1, it can be one of the more difficult kinds of factoring. Doesn't mean there's not ways to approach it. We're going to look at the decomposition method. There are other methods, and hopefully when you're in Math 10C, you will learn a number of different methods, and then you can choose to use the one you like the best. I like decomposition, and we're going to look at that one, and we're more just looking at it the fact that to know that there is a strategy. There are other methods called the box method, there's also trial and error or guess and test. I don't like guess and test because unless your terms have very few factors, it can take a very long time. Okay, so the box method, the decomposition method, I like it because it's an actual process. All right, so, and the big thing to note is that this only happens when you have a factor in front of your x in your trinomial. And like I said, I won't be testing you on this. I'm just kind of demonstrating this for you so you're familiar. So, when we're looking at this, we have different terms in our trinomial. And what we're going to do first is we're going to multiply the first two terms. So we're going to multiply these times these, okay? So we're going to times them, right? We multiply the first and last terms, and then we get 24x squared. So this is our answer to that. And then what we want to look at is we are, just like we did with simple trinomials, we look at that new term, 24x squared, and we find products of that or like factors of that add up to the middle term, right? So products of this that are going to add up to the middle term. So if I look at 24, right? 24, it could be 1 times 24, it could be 2 times 12, it could be 3 times 8, it could be 6 times 4, and then what I want them to add up to is 11, right? So they multiply to give me 24, and I want them to add up to 11. So 1 plus 24 is 25, 2 plus 12 is 14, 3 plus 8 is 11, bingo, 6 plus 4 is 10. So it's going to be these two. Now what I do is I split the middle term into those two terms. And it doesn't matter what order you do it in. Here we have 8x plus 3x, but we could have done 3x plus 8x, okay? Then we have, what we see here is we can now factor by grouping, like we were doing in the previous lesson. So what I do is I put brackets around the first two and the last two, and I'm going to factor them out. When I do that, I get this common and this common. I factor that out, and I get my new expression, right? My 2x plus 3 goes over here, and my x plus 4 goes over here. Okay, so it's kind of combining some of the skills we do on regular trinomials with the skills we do for factoring by grouping. We're going to try some. It's going to make some of you pull your hair out. Some of you are going to love it. It's good practice skills. So the steps are, factor out a GCF is possible. That's always your first step, right? Be sure to factor out a negative if it's the leading coefficient. And don't forget to include the GCF as part of your final answer. You're going to state the product of the coefficient of the first term multiplied by the last term, and then state the sum. It's the coefficient on the middle term. Determine the two factors that multiply to be the product and add up to be the sum. Then you're going to break down your middle term into two factors you determine. This is why it's called decomposition, right? Because we're decomposing that middle term, okay? And then you're going to factor by grouping, and you can check your work by foiling, okay? Here's another example of how it works. But I'm going to do some examples with you because that is a better way to learn. So, here we go. Are we ready for this? We all ready for this now? Okay. So first we look, there's no GCF, right? No GCF. That's what we looked for first. Woohoo! Now we're going to multiply these two together. So multiply to get 8 times negative 6 is negative 48. So we're going to list our factors, and we want it to add up to positive 13. So let's list our factors of negative 48. So 48 divided by 2. I know right now it's not 1 times 48. So that is, oops, I'm floating here. 2 times 24, 4 times 12. 48 divided by, oh, it's also 3 times 16. Now, if I make, it's got to be positive and it's got to be a negative answer. If I make my 3 negative, 3 plus 16, negative 3 plus 16 will work. Okay? So that's what I'm going to decompose the middle into. So I'm going to break it apart. So I'll have 8x squared, and then I'm going to have negative 3x, and then plus 16 minus 6. Now, if one's positive and one's negative, handy trick, put the negative one first. It will make fewer factoring errors. Now, I forgot something, didn't I? I forgot a lovely little x here. Now we're going to factor these by grouping. So x squared minus 3x, well, all I can take out is an x. So I'll get 8x, or 8x squared minus 3x. 8x minus 3. And here, I can take out a 2. So I'll get 8x minus 3. Now I know I'm on the right track, don't I? Because 8x minus 3 and 8x minus 3. So that will be my first one, 8x minus 3, and x plus 2 will be my second one. Now if we want to check that, we can check using FOIL to check. So I do that. I'll get 8x squared plus 16x minus 3x minus 6, 8x squared plus 13x minus 6. So check, I have what I started with, it works. Okay, let's do another one. Alrighty. So first step, I'm going to multiply those two to get my product. And then I'll get my middle term, my sum, which is negative 11. My product, 6 times 3 is 18. Now, I need it to be a positive number here, but a negative there. So that means I'm multiplying negatives times a negative. So, factors of 18. Well, I have negative 1 times negative 18, negative 2 times negative 9, negative 3 times negative 6, and I think that's it. Now, of those, negative 2 plus negative 9 equals 11. So this will be that will be what I'm going to decompose. So let's look here. So I'm going to decompose the middle term, which means I'm going to break it into those two pieces. So I'm going to get 6x squared minus 2x. I'm going to write plus a negative 9x because it'll help me with factoring. And then I'm going to put in my brackets and factor by grouping. So 6x squared minus 2x is, I can divide them both by 2x. So I will get 3x minus 1. And negative 9 plus 3, I can divide both of them by, I don't want a negative in there, so I can divide it by a negative 3. So I'll get 3x minus 1. Now, I'm on the right track because 3x minus 1, 3x minus 1. So I know I'm doing the right thing. So let's divide out that 3x minus 1 times 2x minus 3. And again, if you want to check it, check with FOIL. Okay, and you will find that indeed it works. Okay, next one. So I'm going to multiply these two to get my product. Okay, so my product is negative 14 and my sum is positive 5. So since my product is negative, that means I've got one negative term and one positive term. So let's list our factors. Negative 2 times 7, or positive 2 times negative 7. Now, I could also use 1 and 14, but I can tell those are way off. So looking at this, negative 2 plus 7 equals 5, so those would be my solutions. So let's decompose that middle term, right? So 2x squared, put the negative first, it'll make fewer mistakes. So negative 2 plus 7x. I basically broken that 5x into those two pieces, minus 7. Now I'm going to put in my brackets and I'm going to factor by grouping. So 2x squared minus 2x, I can divide out a 2x. So I'll get x minus 1. And 7x minus 7, I can divide out a 7 and I'll get x minus 1. Are we on the right track? I hope you can see that yes, indeed we are. X minus 1 is in both brackets. So let's factor that out, x minus 1, and the remainder goes in the other bracket. Okay, and how would we check if we were right? We could check with FOIL. Okay, alrighty, and I can see we are right. So away we go. Let's do another one. Remember, this might be a good time for you to pause the video, try it on your own. Now, this one has a negative in the front. We don't like that, do we? We think that's bad. It also has, I believe, a greatest common factor of 3. Yes, it does, because 3 can be divided out of each of these. So I'm going to divide out a negative 3 and get rid of that negative number and that negative term as well. So I'll get x squared. 48 or negative 48 divided by negative 3 is positive 16x. And negative 165 divided by negative 3 is positive 55. Okay, so I'm glad I did that. Do you know why? Because now I don't actually have a to-do decomposition. I can go back to the old school way of just saying, okay, two numbers that multiply to give me 5 that add up to 16. So 55 and 16. So 55, it could be, there's not a lot of factors actually. 5 times 11. Now, do they add up to 16? They do indeed. So those are what's in the brackets. It's just going to be x plus 5, x plus 11, right? So sometimes when you factor out the GCF, it actually makes it a nice simple trinomial. And you can just go back to your regular way of factoring instead of doing decomposition. And we'd rather do that if we can. Okay, let's do the next one. I can tell right away that there is a GCF. Come on. There we go. I can factor out a 2 from each thing, and I'll get 9x squared minus 12x minus 5. Now I'm going to multiply my first and last term to get my product. 9 times negative 5 is negative 45. And my sum would be negative 12. Okay, so I want to find the factors that will work to give me this. So 45 divided by 9 is 5. We know that. So we've got negative 9 times 5, or 9 times negative 5. Those don't add up to negative 12. But 45 can also be divided by 3. So it could be negative 3 times 15 or 3 times negative 15. Looking at those, that's the one that gives me my sum. So that's what I'm going to decompose the 12x into. So we have to keep all this stuff. 2 is there. We have 9x squared. We're going to put the minus 15 first because we'll make fewer errors, plus 3x minus 5. Now, we're going to, within these brackets, we're going to factor by grouping. So again, do not lose your GCF. So 9x squared minus 15x, we can divide those both by 3x. So I'll get 3x minus 5. And here, 3x minus 5, well, I've got it already. If I can't divide anything out, I divide out a 1. Okay, so looking at this, I've got my 3x minus 5, right? Phew, so I have my 2, oops. I have my 3x minus 5, and then what's left over? 3x plus 1. So 3x plus 1. Okay, and how would we check this? You can check using FOIL. Alrighty, let's look at the next one. Oh, I've got both a GCF and a negative number. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of both of them. I want to get rid of the negative, and I can tell that 4 goes into all of these. So I'm going to get 3x squared minus x minus 2. Okay, now remember, there is a little invisible 1 here. We just don't write it down. Okay, so we're going to multiply these two to get our product. So our product would be negative 6, and our sum would be negative 1. Okay, so let's think of our products of negatives, or our factors of negative 6. Negative 2 times 3 and negative 3 times 2. I also have 1 and 6, but I'm looking at these. So I could do negative 1 times 6 or 1 times negative 6. But remember, I want them to add up to negative 1. So I'm looking at them, and that's the one that works. Negative 3 plus 2 will give me a negative 1. So that's what I'm going to break this into. I keep my GCF, 3x squared. I'm going to write the negative first, right? Plus 2x. So the negative 3 plus the 2x minus 2. Now we're going to put in our brackets within the brackets, and we're going to factor by grouping. So 3x squared minus 3x, I can divide out a 3x, so I'll get x minus 1. And 2x minus 2, I can divide out a 2, x minus 1. So that's what we want. Now look, bingo, bingo, we are on the right track. Okay, keep our GCF, x minus 1 times 3x plus 2. Okay. All right, 2 more examples. Now, this next one, we have to change the order because we don't want that 6x squared at the back, right? So we're just going to change our order. Keep the signs with each expression. Now, the other thing is I have a negative sign. I don't like that, right? So I'm going to factor out that negative. Just 1 second. So negative, I can write a 1. It's okay. So I'll get 6x squared minus 7x plus 2. Basically, it just changes the signs of those. I'm going to multiply these to get my product, and this is my sum. So my product is 12, it's positive 12, and my sum is a negative 7. So because my sum is a negative 7 and my product is a positive 12, I know both my terms need to be negative. So I'm thinking, well, it's not negative 1 times negative 12. No, it's not negative 2 times negative 6. That does not add up to negative 7. But negative 3 times negative 4, dun, 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 that adds up to negative 7. So that's what I'm going to break my middle term into. So let's do this. So I keep my GCF, 6x squared. They're both negative, so negative 3x plus a negative 4x. I do that because they'll make less factoring errors when you do grouping if you write plus a negative. So we'll put in our brackets, and now we're going to do our factoring. So 6x squared minus 3x, I can factor out a minus 3x. No, just a 3x. Why am I doing a minus 3x? That was just silly. A 3x. So we'll get 2x minus 1. And here we're going to factor out a negative 2. And I'll get 2x minus 1. All right. We are on the right track because that's the same as that, right? Okay. So keep my negative 1 there. 2x minus 1 times 3x minus 2. And how would we check? We would check with FOIL. Okay. I check by checking my notes, but check with FOIL. It will work. You know, it uses a lot of the same skills we use for the other. The only difference is that first operation, that multiplication. And sometimes doesn't even matter. Like here, we have a GCF. Okay, so we can factor out from each term a 5. So x squared minus xy minus 6y squared. Okay, now I don't have a term in front of the bracket, so all I need to do is look at this term, which is a negative 1, and this term. So my product is negative 6, and my sum is negative 1. So to get negative 6, I need a plus and a negative. So it's either going to be negative 2 times 3 or 2 times negative 3. So which of those two adds up to negative 1? Right? So 5x plus 2y, x minus 3y. Okay, don't forget about the y's because it's part of that whole expression. Okay, so we didn't even have to do no decomp, which is nice. It's always nice to do when you GCF and you get to that situation. So now you can do a little practice just to see where you're at with it. It's good to kind of dip our toes. You're going to re-experience it in Math 10C and then again in 20-1 or 20-2, depending on the route you take. But it's more, in Math 15, it's more just an introduction. So